Ah, golf. What's not to love? It's a sport all about sending balls flying through the air by whacking them hard with funny-looking sticks. Such a pitch I personally find to be really quite irresistible. It's for that reason that I decided to take the plunge and purchase the latest Mario-themed video game version of the sport, Mario Golf Super Rush. Much to my dismay, though, it turns out that a not insignificant portion of the game is instead premised around gently rolling your ball across the ground by lightly tapping it with an albeit funny-shaped stick. A practice apparently known as putting, and one I desired to take no part in. Therefore, our angle of inquiry for today's video is obvious. Is it possible to beat Mario Golf Super Rush without putting? If this is the course of action we wish to pursue, which it is, then we'll first need to define what exactly putting is. I've decided that for our purposes today, a putt will be any shot using the putter. Our goal is to get through the entire golf adventure mode without using that putter. Alright then, I think we're ready now to start our adventure. There's a lot of talking at the start of this campaign. It actually takes a surprisingly long time to actually get to rounds of golf. Eventually, though, we are finally unleashed for 3 holes on the rookie course. All we've got to do is finish in 5 over par for the course or better. No problem, right? The approach to the green really hasn't changed all that much in this challenge since, quite frankly, if you were attempting to putt along the fairway, then I think you were doing it wrong to begin with. When we get to the green, though, things do change a little. Firstly, the game really wants us to putt. So much so that switching to a club other than the putter on the green is actually considerably less responsive than switching clubs elsewhere on the course. With a bit of spamming of the analog stick, you can make it happen though. The bigger problem is getting the power on your shot just right. Often you'll be trying to chip it in from an uncomfortably close range. One tip for making this easier is stopping the power gauge on its way down rather than the way up. Gives you more reaction time. Even still, it isn't exactly the largest range that allows the ball to reach the hole without coming up short or overshooting. Ultimately, it's a way of going about things that's going to take some getting used to. And I am quite simply not there yet, and as a result scored a +4 for the course, which luckily was enough to progress, but will certainly need to be improved upon if we want to make it much further. Our next challenge is speed golf on 3 holes on the rookie course within 10 minutes, and a score of +3 or better. For those of you uninitiated, speed golf means that you need to control your character running to where your ball landed and are under some sort of time pressure. In this case, the 10 minutes actually wasn't that big of a deal, so I was able to fairly safely focus on my shots. Hole 16 was pretty clean, ending in par. On hole 17, I ran into a bit of trouble on the green, in particular with hitting shots weak enough to make it into the hole when I was right next to it. It really is quite easy to miss your opportunity entirely and just end up starting up the power gauge again instead of locking in your shot's power. Ultimately, this hole ended in a bogey. Hole 18 was more of the same. I got on the green in few enough shots to have a legitimate birdie attempt, but ultimately ended up with a double bogey. That means, for the course, I have secured a score of +3, which is just good enough to carry on. Our next challenge is getting through the first 9 holes of Bonnie Greens with a score of +4 or better. That didn't go very well. I ended up finishing with a score of +10 for the course. My approaches actually weren't that bad, but my accuracy of chipping into the hole is still pretty awful. But nothing to do but try again. Things start off a lot better this time, with a birdie on the first hole, and the second hole, and the third hole. What's changed? Well, I think I'm finally starting to get a handle on how exactly the roll of my wedge shots behaves. That's to say, I'm getting used to how much I need to undershoot the carry of the shot to allow for the roll to finish the job properly, instead of bouncing off of the pin or falling short. That's not to say I'm infallible now. On hole 5, I got caught behind a tree, which handicapped my approach, and led in part to me getting a double bogey on that hole. The last few holes do include some bogeys, but ultimately the score I ended up with was +1. So we can move on to the Bonnie Greens tournament. Day 1 of the tournament is on the same front 9 holes we already played. As such, I ended up with a very similar end result, with a score of +1, which, given the state of the rest of the competition, is not a bad setup for Day 2. Day 2 is on the back 9, which is a set of holes we haven't played yet, so hopefully all goes well. Hole 10 was a pretty simple par, and on hole 11 we managed to score birdie. Then on hole 12, I tried taking a shortcut that ended up putting me out of bounds. Luckily, due to some good wedge work on the green, that only ended up leading to a bogey. I managed to get a par in the next 3 holes, while my main opponent, Chargin' Chuck, lost ground against me by getting over par a couple times. On hole 16, I secured a birdie with a good wedge from a fair distance away, bringing me to par for the course and the lead of the tournament. On hole 17, I get another birdie while Chuck gets a bogey. Things would have to go very poorly on hole 18 for me to lose now. Things didn't exactly go smoothly, but I only got a bogey and therefore par for the course, and victory in the tournament. Victory in that tournament just leads us to the next rung of our adventure, Ridge Rock Lake, which introduces us to the best and yet extremely underutilized mode in the entire game, Cross Country Golf, or as the game likes to call it, XC Golf for short. In this mode, you're unleashed on the whole course at once and tasked with beating the holes in any order you want, starting your attempt at the next hole from the last hole you got in, with a limited number of total strokes to do the whole thing in. The mode is as much about the micromanagement of each individual shot as it is planning the most efficient overall route to get you through to all of the holes. You'll be needing to deal with these honestly quite annoying tornadoes and make sure you aren't needlessly wasting shots on the green. A task easier said than done, as the winds here are a lot more extreme than on the other courses we've tried so far. Usually winds don't matter much on the green, but since we aren't putting, they matter a great deal to us. Ultimately though, it was a fun, relaxing puzzle of a time that now makes way for us to venture into Balmy Dunes after learning how to do a special shot. Balmy Dunes adds this hydration mechanic, which basically just acts as another clock you gotta keep on top of. Honestly, quite redundant if you ask me. In terms of the course, wind speeds are back to sensible levels, which helped me to get a birdie on all 3 of the first 3 holes in the teaser. The rest of the first 9 are similarly simple, even in a true speed golf format. Then I got to hole 12, which was a complete nightmare with its cliffs on my first time through. Like seriously, how the heck are you supposed to play from that position? I did end up redeeming myself on the second attempt though. Finally, Balmy Dunes was wrapped up with some speed golf against Boo and Chargin' Chuck across all 18 holes. I'd say my strength in this was more so consistently decent golf than speed. I did not end up completely self-destructing in hole 12, and in the end I won by 21 seconds. Close, but hey, close is good enough to move on to our next course, Wild Weather Woods, which presents us with a few difficulties. Firstly, extreme wind speeds are back, and with a vengeance, and they really do throw off the aiming on these wedge shots from the green, if you aren't used to compensating for it, which after so much time in the relatively calm, balmy dunes, quite frankly, I'm not. Additionally, there's loads of rain here, which makes the grass wet, which makes it slow down our ball when it rolls so it doesn't roll quite as far, which completely throws off the amount of power our shots on the green require. So basically, this course throws off both the carry and roll of our shots, especially from the green. That being said, our tour through the first 3 and then the front 9 holes goes alright. We then take a bit of a break to learn lob shots, then fight a boss, and then fight another boss, and then we've got to play 18 holes of point-based speed golf against Luigi and Donkey Kong. And this proved to be by far the most difficult leg of our journey. The previously stated difficulties of the course are still present. The wind is harsh and the rain annoying. Additionally, Donkey Kong and Luigi are fast. They can especially outpace me on the greens since I need time to switch to the wedge and hit the power bar on the downswing, which often results in failure and requires another attempt and sometimes another, and oh, what do you know, my opponents have already sunk their balls while I was trying to line up a single shot. They even get access to tap-ins, which I don't have because I can't use my putter. Okay. So some parts of my game are slower than normal due to the challenge, but was that not equally the case in Balmy Dunes, which we got through perfectly fine? Well, No, not really, and here's why. First, I imagine that the AI here is probably just better and in general more competent. It is theoretically supposed to be further along the difficulty curve after all. But the other issue is the scoring system. Back at Balmy Dunes, your score was represented as a total time to complete the course, which itself reflected the amount of time each hole took, plus 30 seconds for each stroke you took. This meant that the outcome of individual holes didn't matter all too much. The important thing was keeping up a consistent game and not having any disastrous holes to undo all of your decent ones. Here at Wild Weather Woods, though, things operate, differently. On each individual hole, your time is still calculated the same way. Your total time to complete the hole, plus 30 seconds per stroke. The difference is that those times are then used to award first, second, and third on each hole. Those standings then give points. 3 for first on a hole, 2 for second, and 1 for third. It's those points, not your times, that accumulate together to determine your score for the course. This means finishing in second by just a second, which on Balmy Dunes would have been a barely perceivable difference in the final scores. Here is the difference between 3 points and 2, or in other words, a 33% decrease in points for the hole. That's meaningful. That pressure then actually causes me to play worse. I mean, think about it. If my opponent, who's on the same stroke as me, is on the verge of putting their ball in on an easy shot, I might just rush my own shot, perhaps try to hit the power gauge on the way up and overshoot as a result. Also, Luigi's ice power basically shuts me down completely if it happens by the hole, since it's so darn bouncy, and I'm essentially just forced to wait it out, which is obviously not great for my time on the given hole. It also hurts in the other direction. Occasionally, the AI will play a hole horrendously. I mean, we're talking about triple bogeys sometimes. But as far as the scoring is concerned, they might as well have barely lost by a couple seconds, because their score would be the same regardless. So yeah, in summary, my typically fairly consistent, slightly slow golf is really not suited for this. But nevertheless, we must push forward regardless, and hope, by all hopes, that we can make something happen here. Man, after all that, I think I would be fine never hearing that course's track again. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's pretty good music, but I am sick of it. Anyway, we're finally done with Wild Weather Woods, and can move on to the Bowser Highlands, a frozen course with actual somewhat aggressive enemies that nevertheless proved to be a complete cakewalk. That's due in large part to the fact that this course isn't competitive. It's cooperative. You see, Wario, Waluigi, and I are joining forces together to team up and get through this front 9. There is, however, a catch. On each individual hole, at least one of us has to get a par, or else we're kicked back to the start. Here's the thing, though. Either Wario or Waluigi, or both, got an acceptable score on 7 of the 9 holes. That means that all I needed to do to get by was get a par or better on the 2 that they didn't, which I did. That's not to say I was free riding on the other holes. I actually did pretty well on most of them, considering it was a sight read. And of course, you don't know which holes your allies are going to fail you on going into it, so it's important to give it your all on each and every one. But looking back on it, the real stakes were actually incredibly low. With those holes cleared, all that stands between us and a successful adventure is a battle with the Snow King, which doesn't involve any putting, even slightly. And now that we are through the adventure, we can finally answer the question we opened this video with. Is it possible to beat Mario Golf Super Rush without putting? Well, not exactly. Don't get me wrong, we didn't putt on any of those courses. But here's the thing. Before the powers that be had led us on the rookie course all the way back at the start of our journey, they required that we undergo some golf training. This included some driving, approach shots, and yes, putting. 9 putts to be precise. So to answer our question, no. Apparently, to be a golfer in the Mushroom Kingdom, you must practice 9 strokes worth of putting, even if you never use those putts on a single course. How unfortunate. And that's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking it and leaving a comment. Additionally, you may want to subscribe, as I've got plenty of other Mario challenges on this very channel to check out, as well as similar content on other games. On the flip side, if you just want to watch me play a bunch of Mario, perhaps consider checking out my Let's Play channel, where I'm currently playing Super Mario 64. But anyways guys, until next time, I've been SeaMcCraft, and I'll be putting my head down and getting to work on the next video now. Goodbye.